February 2011. The Arab Spring blooms in Libya. Colonel Muammar Gaddafi orders his army to attack his own people. An outraged international community responds, and the United Nations declares all of Libya a no-fly zone. But how best to enforce it? 5,000 miles away in Missouri, inside Whiteman Air Force Base, strict security surrounds the flight line. Here, specially trained maintenance crews prepare the world's most secretive aircraft for possible combat. Whiteman has housed the B-2s in climate-controlled hangars for 20 years. Keeping them combat-ready is no easy feat.
The skill level for the members that are working on the B-2 in particular is very unique. It takes anywhere from 3 to 4 years to be qualified and experienced on this aircraft.
The skin of the bombers must be free of any dents to maintain optimum stealth.
This individual up here is performing a post-flight inspection on the aircraft to determine if there are any anomalies or defects that need to be fixed. There's a lot more that goes into keeping this aircraft healthy and the amount of hours it takes to maintain the stealth capabilities.
In March 2011, the call comes to prep for a possible mission in Libya. The 6 B-2 pilots with the most experience receive an unusual top-secret order. They are told to sleep.
Crew rest is the 12 hours prior to showing up to fly that a pilot is mandated to have to do nothing.
Retired Colonel Eric Single was the first pilot ever to fly the B-2 in combat. He found pre-mission rest next to impossible.
You're trying to rest, but at the same time you're pretty excited and trying to get some sleep during the middle of the day never works out with wives and kids and daytime outside. So it's tough to do, but you get as much rest and mental preparation as you can.
Military chiefs ask for 3 stealth bombers to do in Libya what they've become known for, knocking down the door.
That means the B-2 is assigned to take down key targets on night 1 of the campaign. By knocking down the door, you weaken the enemy's air defenses.
Author Dr. Rebecca Grant is the foremost civilian expert on the B-2.
Libya is an example of how much the B-2 is in demand. Its missions were classic B-2. Make sure that Gaddafi could not use the remnants of his air force to challenge NATO aircraft, enforcing the no-fly zone.
The Flight Equipment Department is the last stop before pilots board the plane. They collect survival gear, including a 9mm handgun, in case they're shot down over enemy territory. Then, out to their bombers. There is only one way into a B-2, the stairs on its belly, and 2 ways out, the stairs again, or the emergency ejection seats. The inside is classified. We can tell you there's a huge sloping windscreen with an equally huge instrument panel. Behind the 2 pilot seats, a rectangular floor space, 4 foot by 6 foot, just big enough to lie down. Then a toilet. Sorry, limited capacity and no partitions. And a microwave to warm up bomber dogs, a pilot favorite. March 18, commanders send 3 B-2s to attack in Libya. Enough to inflict the damage of more than 100 conventional aircraft. They'll be in Libya in 12 hours. And still, only a select few know they're going. For most of the way, the B-2s appear on radar as ordinary aircraft. They mostly fly on autopilot. But that doesn't mean rest for the two-person crew aboard each bomber. They must deal with the many systems on board and talk with civilian and military air controllers to avoid a mid-air collision.
The one thing about the B-2 is it's an intellectually challenging aircraft.
Colonel Kristen Goodwin is Vice Wing Commander at Whiteman. She's also an active B-2 pilot.
You're always getting updates. You're ensuring that your system is accurate. You're making sure your timing is right. You're usually working with one or two other aircraft in formation. It is a very busy time from takeoff to landing. There's not a lot of time to sit back.
As the three B-2s near the Libyan border, NATO confirms Gaddafi has not backed down. The mission is a go. Time to stealth up. In the top-secret cockpit of the world's most expensive aircraft, there is a button little bigger than a letter on your keyboard and marked with the word pen for penetration. The pen button retracts protruding antennae and tucks navigation lights into diamond-shaped panels. Much else is classified, but it's known that the shape of the bomber takes radar waves and bends or scatters them. Having no tail significantly reduces the radar's signature, while the sawtooth pattern that replaces the tail also disperses engine heat and infrared signatures. The special coating of the plane absorbs and breaks up radar waves, as does the windshield. To do so, it's treated with a thin layer of 24-karat gold. A B-2 in full stealth mode has the radar signature of a seagull. A very quiet one.
Once you go into enemy territory, you're really not talking to anybody at that point because you want to minimize your transmissions, and even a radio transmission is an emission. So for a stealthy airplane, you don't want to do any of that.
The 150-ton B-2s will be hard to detect over Libya, but not invisible to the naked eye. The moon is at its brightest, making pilots nervous. On the ground in Libya, Gaddafi's soldiers stand at high alert with SA-5 Gammon surface-to-air missiles that can fire with accuracy to an altitude of 65,000 feet. A serious threat. 12 hours after leaving Missouri, the B-2s cross the border of Libya under the cover of darkness. Already, they've loaded their satellite-guided weapons with target coordinates. Now it's go time. The primary target, Gaddafi's airfields and hangars. But suddenly, there's a problem. In one of the B-2s, a 1-ton bomb jams in the rotary launcher. In other types of aircraft, there is access to the bombs, but not in the B-2. The pilots can't see, but they know.
The system is very quick. You know instantaneously if you have the hung weapon because you can actually watch the display and watch the weapons leave the pylon on your display. So if one of them doesn't, you get a big yellow hash mark through it.
They rotate the launcher to discharge the next bomb. It also fails to dislodge. And then another. 3 1-ton bombs hopelessly jammed. 2 stealth bombers unleash their full payload of bombs, a devastating assault on Libya's air forces. They drop 16 one-ton bombs each, all dead on target. The third B-2, not so effective. 3 bombs jam in the launcher, and there's no fix this far from home.
When you fly a bomber, one of the things you're always concerned about is getting a hung ordnance.
Colonel Tony Imandi was one of the first B-2 combat pilots, and he trained many others.
You try to drop a bomb, it tries to drop for whatever reason, it gets hung up and it's stuck in your weapons bay. It's either hanging by a wire or it didn't fire. So you're not sure exactly what the problem is.
When pilots open a B-2's bomb bay doors, the aircraft is more visible to radar. If Gaddafi's fighter jets locate a B-2 and show up to attack, that B-2 has no way of defending itself. Stealth is the only ace up its sleeve. The pilots have no choice. They drop all they can and hit 13 of their 16 targets, but must then head for home. 3 dodgy bombs still aboard.
You have to be safe. So in most cases, you keep the weapons bay doors closed, and if you can, you will put that weapon in a position where it can't fall out. So if you happen to have a rotary launcher, per se, you can rotate the launcher and put the bomb on the top.
Gaddafi's surface-to-air missiles don't come close to hitting a B-2. Even with one of the 3 planes compromised, the B-2s hold enough firepower to wipe out all 45 of Gaddafi's hardened aircraft shelters. The stealth bomber has knocked down the door in Libya. Gaddafi and the world know it. The bombers make their way home as President Obama makes it official.
Today, I authorize the Armed Forces of the United States to begin a limited military action in Libya.
The stealth bombers near Whiteman after 24 hours of non-stop flying. There's still no time to rest for the pilots carrying the 3 jammed bombs. Their aircraft gets special treatment.
When you land, you must treat that bomb as if it's live and as if it's going to fall off. So you do special procedures when you land. You go to a special place on the airfield. They call out special people, and you just very carefully open the airplane up inch by inch to make sure that the bomb's not resting on the doors or anything. And God forbid you have an accident, you're far enough away that you wouldn't hurt other people.
7 months later, a NATO aircraft hits Gaddafi's convoy as he tries to escape. Rebels find him hiding in a drainage pipe. The conflict is over. Libya was the B-2's 4th combat mission, all of them originating from one place, Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri. It was December 17, 1993, that a crowd first gathered here to greet the nation's most closely kept aviation secret. 172 feet of aircraft, all wing, no tail. The B-2 Spirit made a lasting impression.
I think every 4-star general in the Air Force was assembled at the airfield to watch the B-2 fly in.
The spirit of Missouri is home. The B-2 has reached their final parking position in front of the dais. General Lowe has shut down her engines, and now begins the ceremony officially welcoming the plane.
Its arrival represents more than a technical leap forward. It adds a revolutionary new dimension to air warfare.
When I saw it in flight, I thought, wow, this thing is special. It really, the word majestic came to mind.
It just has a presence of power and precision. And I'll tell you what, if you're on the end of the runway and you see that B-2 take off, you say, I'm really glad that it's on our side.
The first American aircraft anything like the B-2 emerged in the 1940s with the XB-35. A bat-wing shape was designed to create maximum airlift for long-range bombing missions. The YB-49 followed it. Same shape, more advanced, but stealth was still not a consideration. That came in the 1960s with a focus on the Cold War. Lockheed built the SR-71 and gave it some stealth qualities, including a skin with special radar-absorbing materials. The SR-71 was a long-range spy plane, but not a nuclear war deterrent. For that, the United States needed a stealth bomber.
So the mission of the B-2 was to use stealth to penetrate the borders of the Soviet Union and fly a long mission, drop nuclear bombs, and return.
Reducing the radar signature meant no tail and a curved design. Ideas and innovations that took a leap forward with a paper published in 1964 by a mathematician on the other side.
Stealth was actually based on some calculations done by a Russian. They were translated and read by a man at Lockheed who realized that you could use these principles to calculate a way to reduce radar return, and from those calculations, build an aircraft.
Weapons giant the Northrop Corporation combined the stealth design with radar-absorbing paint and materials. The stealth code was cracked. They could make a plane invisible to radar, but they couldn't hide the price tag. $2.13 billion per plane. At the time, the same cost as 13 747 passenger jets. Why so much? Just over $1 billion per plane for materials and manufacture, making the B-2 literally worth its weight in gold. Then, Northrop also had to set up a special top-secret plant to build the planes. And before that, they spent $20 billion on research and development. That cost was to be spread over the initial order of 132 aircraft, but only 21 were ever built. 20 B-2s remain. The 21st became a case study. Even a $2 billion plane can have a fatal flaw. February 23, 2008. The Spirit of Kansas takes off from the U.S. Air Force Base in Guam, the end of a 4-month deployment. The jet pitches up, then stalls. The pilots have a split second to work out if they can save the plane. Then, a wing hits the ground. They realize all is lost, and they eject. Just 17 seconds after takeoff, the B-2 crashes and bursts into flames. The culprit? Water. Guam's humidity causes speed sensors to malfunction. They tell the system it's going 14 miles an hour faster than its actual acceleration. The onboard computer commands full nose up. But without enough speed to support their high-pitched takeoff, they lose lift and crash.
One good thing about the Guam crash was it turned out to have a very clear answer. It was a pretty easy item to fix on the maintenance checklist.
Other B-2 pilots find great comfort in the safe ejection of their colleagues.
You don't know till you first use the seat if it's going to work. And the seats worked, and they were alive to tell us what happened to that B-2.
Similar for the plane itself. Would it work in combat? Some wondered if the B-2 would ever be tested. After first delivery to Whiteman, the B-2s sat at the ready for 6 long years. With the Cold War over, they languished. Then, the stealth bomber finally got its chance. Not in Russia or the Middle East, but in Yugoslavia.
We would have never picked Yugoslavia as a place where we thought the B-2 would cut its teeth, its combat teeth, but that's what happened.
January 1999. Serbian security forces execute 45 Kosovo Albanians. It's the latest wave of violence in what becomes known globally as ethnic cleansing.
This is a humanitarian catastrophe that we have to avoid. There are tens of thousands of people that will die or be driven from their homes.
Serbian leader Slobodan Milosevic amasses his forces on the Kosovo border. Fighting escalates.
The former Yugoslavia is in full-on disintegration. This brings on the Kosovo crisis, and NATO decides for the first time in its history to go to war.
President Clinton calls on Whiteman's B-2 commanders. After a decade of nothing but practice runs, the stealth bombers finally have the chance to show what they can do.
When the call came, we were more than ready. We were anxious.
It falls on Colonel Tony Amandi to pick the airmen. No one has ever flown the B-2 in combat. All 50 pilots want the chance. Tony must choose 4.
It was the quiet, competent aviator that we were looking for, one who wasn't looking to collect medals and trophies for his trophy case, but yet worked silently and diligently with a team member, there are 2 pilots in a B-2, to get the job done.
Then is Eric Single.
Very huge responsibility. You knew the airplane, you knew the mission, but it had never been tested, so you had a lot of unknowns out there.
Also set to make its combat debut in Kosovo, the JDAM. A JDAM is a Boeing-built attachment that converts any number of free-falling bombs into precision-guided weapons. Bomb loaders strap on the movable tail fins and the GPS guidance systems. The B-2 can carry 16 2,000-pound JDAM bombs, or as many as 80 500-pound JDAMs.
We were training with the JDAM weapon in our weapon system, but like most training days, we don't go out and drop a lot of weapons in training because they're expensive and we just can't afford to. So there was some question in my mind how the JDAM was going to perform in its first combat venture as well as the B-2.
No more drills. It's a live run. March 23, 1999. 4 pilots in 2 B-2 bombers take off for Kosovo. For their first combat mission, a 30-hour return trip. As they reach the Mediterranean, they appear on radar as regular aircraft.
Air traffic control kept telling us, hey, you know, how far are you going up here? Don't you know, that's all restricted airspace up there. And eventually we just had to turn them off because they kept asking questions we couldn't answer about who we were and where we were going and that type of thing.
The two B-2s enter stealth mode. Pilots also switch off all unnecessary lights on the flight deck and climb to an altitude that reduces their contrails. A computer displays the best strategy. It shows up on screen as a blue line.
The blue line is the course the B-2 pilots choose in order to maximize the stealth properties of their aircraft and elude most of the threats from surface-to-air missiles or from enemy fighters. It uses everything the B-2 has: stealth, speed, altitude, heading, in order to maximize its chance of succeeding on the mission.
The real question was, would the enemy be able to see us? Would they send fighters up to join on us? Would they try to engage with us? Or would all the money we invested in this airplane finally pay off?
The former Yugoslavia has pretty formidable air defenses. They have an air force of about 90 aircraft. They have modern surface-to-air missiles. They've already given NATO pilots an occasional run for their money over this airspace.
You're over enemy territory for a good hour, hour and a half. Your eyes are glued in there to make sure that nobody's tracking you or even seeing you out there.
It's a cold spring night over Kosovo. 14 hours into their flight, pilots confirm the mission is a go. The aircraft shudder as they discharge 5 bombs from twin rotary pylons. The B-2's guided bombs strike Serbian airfields. 32 direct hits. The Serbs scramble a dozen MiG-29s. The enemy fighters scan the night sky for the B-2s. It's tense and dangerous.
We did hear, that the fighters were airborne. That kind of gives you pause.
NATO sends up fighter jets for added protection, but the B-2s follow their blue lines out of conflict. No sign of detection. Night 1, triumph and relief. When they returned to Whiteman, Senior Master Sergeant Craig Smith was there.
When we get a call to find out that it did its mission and what we'd been working towards for 6 years and not really knowing if it was going to work in combat, and to finally hear them say that aircraft has performed its mission and returning to Whiteman was a sense of success and pride at the same time.
But it's far from over. Whiteman expected the B-2s to be used for the first 3 days of the war only. Instead, NATO commanders call on the bombers again and again.
The objective was just to fly for 3 nights, hit hard, and convince Milosevic to give up his persecution of the ethnic Albanians. What happened, in fact, was that NATO ended up running a 78-day air war. They deployed more aircraft, they dug in, and they decided to fight it out.
The weather in Yugoslavia was bad, and the B-2 was the only weapon system that had the JDAM. So for 78 days, that war continued, and we continued to fly B-2 sorties in support of that war.
The demand strains resources, but the results speak for themselves. 8 out of 10 targets hit on the first pass. In the first 8 weeks of combat, the B-2s only fly 3% of the combat sorties, but strike 33% of all targets.
Kosovo really proved that the naysayers were wrong about the B-2. The combination of stealth and precision was everything that the advocates of the B-2 had ever hoped for and more.
It's an A+ report card until a devastating mishap. In the middle of the 3-month-long Kosovo conflict, 5 bombs from a B-2 hit the Chinese embassy in Belgrade. 3 Chinese journalists lay dead, 27 others injured. It's an international disaster that threatens peacekeeping efforts. and brings the B-2 under diplomatic fire. The U.S. Air Force immediately launches an investigation. In Washington, they exonerate the B-2 and blame the CIA, who provided the coordinates.
The attack was a mistake.
I find it embarrassing that we didn't have in our databases the precise location of the Chinese embassy.
The bombing of the Chinese embassy was a huge controversy, but a black eye perhaps more for the intelligence system overall than for the B-2 itself. In a strange way, it proved everything we'd already seen with the B-2. It was devastatingly accurate.
On June 10, 1999, the war in Kosovo ends when Serbia finally agrees to a peace deal. NATO used no ground forces at all, but relied entirely on air power. The B-2's debut role was crucial. President Clinton visits Whiteman for the celebration.
Most Americans will never know how hard this was or how hard our forces worked. The pilots, the crews, the people who make it happen on the ground. But I want you to know that we are very proud of you.
Kosovo was the B-2's shakedown conflict, and its operators learn important lessons. Each sortie to Kosovo and back meant some 30 hours in the air. The pilots are supposed to take turns sleeping, but adrenaline makes that tough.
Some guys couldn't sleep, too keyed up on the missions. You know, they came back and said, nah, I was awake the whole darn time.
Part of the problem, this was a plane built for stealth, not comfort, especially for missions 20 or 40 hours long.
Engineers, when they built the aircraft, they didn't put a lot of thought into the human dynamics of flying long durations. They put all their energy into the stealthiness of the plane and its capabilities. It's not about comfort.
The only space to lie down is on a hard floor by the toilet. Eric Single improvises. He fits his $2.1 billion aircraft with a folding lawn chair. Price tag, $8.88.
I got a lot of funny looks the first time we brought it out there until a couple other people tried using it, and they said, this is wonderful. This beats the heck out of laying on the floor.
The plane itself must also adapt to stay ahead of countermeasures. It's updated with new satellite communications and other advances in technology. These are ready to go in 2001, when America faces her darkest hour since Pearl Harbor. September 11, 2001. Terrorist attack on U.S. soil. The B-2 becomes a critical part of the military response.
Make no mistake, the United States will hunt down and punish those responsible for these cowardly acts.
Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan sits clearly in America's crosshairs. But the sheer distance represents the greatest challenge yet for the B-2 and its crew. Commanders deploy 6 stealth bombers for a 3-day campaign. From Whiteman to Afghanistan and back becomes the longest non-stop bombing mission in history. More than 44 hours of continuous flight. The B-2's range is only 6,000 miles, less than a 747 passenger jet. To answer the call in such a faraway place the B-2 must rely more than ever on partners in the sky. Mid-air refueling tankers.
It's one of the tougher parts of flying the B-2 because you're flying so close to another large airplane.
On the way to Afghanistan, both pilots must take their seats each time they align with a tanker.
You have to be very precise about where you place your airplane. The boom on a tanker is steerable by the boom operator, but it's only steerable within about a 20-foot box.
A wrong move from either aircraft could be disastrous.
A lot of guys get what we call the 10-minute wanders. You sometimes lose concentration and use focus on that, and you'll find yourself all of a sudden wandering off your visual cues there and having to get back on them.
The B-2s mid-air refuel as many as 5 times just to get to Afghanistan. But once there, they knock down the doors. The targets are few and poorly defended. As expected, their mission is over in just 3 days. But there's not long to wait before the B-2 is tapped for another combat zone. One far more dangerous.
Operation Iraqi Freedom, or Gulf War II, began in March of 2003. It was very different from the operations in Afghanistan because Saddam Hussein had a major army, a significant air force, and dense surface-to-air missiles. Even though the coalition had been flying over the no-fly zones and picking away at these air defenses, Iraq, and Baghdad especially, was still a very heavily defended target.
At Whiteman, there's an impending sense that something is going to happen. Pilots fine-tune their flight equipment and survival gear.
What if everything feels good?
Yeah, it feels good. So
okay.
Kosovo and Afghanistan taught the squadron a great deal about comfort.
Come into our main shop. This is our main work area. This is where we do all the equipment at. We work on helmets, harnesses, parachutes, you name it, we have it. All our storage areas.
Sergeant Dennis Spiker runs the life support room.
What they would do is they would come and we would have to issue out a long duration bag. This is strictly another sleeping cot that we're looking into. It's lightweight, really quick and easy. Urinary bags, if they need them, we call them piddle packs. Basically, if they need to go pee. If they need to relieve themselves, they use a bag for that.
They take off, hit the ideal cruising altitude of 50,000 feet, and settle in. Their targets sit 19 hours away in Iraq. As they draw close, they arm their bombs and move to combat altitude, a classified height. They stealth up, charge in, and drop their bombs. This is the first night of what becomes known as shock and awe. And the B-2 delivers both. Specific B-2 targets remain classified, but bombs hammer the Council of Ministries building. And the whole world gets an upfront look at American firepower. The B-2 bomb raids decimate Saddam's air force, but his ground forces remain formidable. And a week into the war, he catches a break. A massive sandstorm engulfs Allied ground forces fighting toward Baghdad.
Saddam Hussein saw this sandstorm as perhaps his last big chance. He thought that as the ground forces stopped, he could start to use the irregular forces to attack the rear areas and these strung out lines.
American soldiers hunker down. They're vulnerable to attack. In Iraq, U.S. commanders decide to experiment. Could a lone B-2 attack Saddam Hussein's forces through a blizzard of sand?
Saddam Hussein thought that nothing could fly during the sandstorm and that his elite Republican Guards armored forces would be safe.
But a B-2 can see where others cannot.
A B-2 was used to fly during the storm to use its synthetic aperture radar and check for revetted tanks and heavy armor in one of the key Republican Guards divisions guarding Baghdad.
Synthetic aperture radar uses the movement of the aircraft to collect information from multiple points and create an image of a target. A B-2 moves in and flies high above the sandstorm. Its radar sees through the sand to tanks and control stations on the ground. The pilots identify 16 targets and bomb each one with lethal precision. They blow the Iraqi army to smithereens, and with it, Saddam's last hope. The secret science behind the stealth bomber remains the envy of the world. Even after 20 years of service, the B-2 is still one of a kind.
For the most part, the secrets of the B-2 stealth technology have been very well kept. We know quite a bit about it, and yet the real secret sauce that keeps the B-2 flying, gives it the tactical edge, remains right where it should, in the secret realm.
America taps the B-2's iconic status for another kind of mission: deterrence. The Spirit of Missouri was one of 2 B-2s that flew to South Korea in March 2013. This was a not-so-stealthy exercise to temper North Korea's warmongering.
The B-2 is viewed as the man of steel of American air power. You send the B-2 on a mission and it gets everyone's attention. This is a formidable weapon. It can carry nuclear weapons, it can carry conventional weapons, and it, perhaps more than any other single aircraft, symbolizes the might and the resolve and the commitment to deterrence that the U.S. has in the Pacific.
Iran knows as well. The B-2 is a stealth aircraft capable of carrying the 15-ton Massive Ordnance Penetrator, or MOP. These bombs can knock out installations buried deep underground. Her stealth silenced her critics. Through 20 years of trials and triumphs, the B-2 has managed to stay ahead of America's enemies, learning from each new conflict, adapting and upgrading. But for how much longer?
The B-2 is programmed to remain in service until 2045 or beyond. But let me tell you, that is one rugged airframe. And as we are finding with the B-52, it's capable of flying much, much, much longer than we thought. I would not necessarily expect the B-2 to retire in my lifetime.
I think the B-2 stands alone as the most unique airplane ever built in this country. It also changed the design of airplanes for the future. It's the payload, it's the range, it's the stealthiness, it's all of that balanced together with all the modifications and upgrades that will keep it formidable for years and years to come.
The B-2 inspired new generation stealth helicopters that were reportedly used in the raid that got Osama bin Laden. The stealth bomber also blazed the trail for stealthy unmanned aircraft. They fly without risking the lives of pilots at just a fraction of the cost of a B-2. While the future is uncertain, stealth will most definitely be a part of it. And the airplane that set the standard was the B-2 Spirit. Still, the world's one and only stealth bomber.
An American armada cuts through the waters of the Arabian Sea. At the heart of this strike group is one of the mightiest warships in naval history, an aircraft carrier, the USS Enterprise. Her crews work in one of the most dangerous places in the world.
We only have to fail once to fail forever.
Her orders: support the ground troops fighting 2 wars, using some of the world's most advanced warplanes and weaponry.
Your heart gets pumping and you know that what you're doing is really important.
Aviators are launched into combat.
It's the most thrilling and the scariest thing I've ever done in my life.
Now, witness the complex choreography that's life on an aircraft carrier. Home to thousands, deployed for months, working non-stop in controlled chaos, day after day, wondering when they'll see home again. A carrier at war, the USS Enterprise. The Enterprise is a floating city, a temporary home to more than 5,500 men and women for almost 7 months on a mission that will span 59,000 miles.
Okay, on to the big picture.
Naval aviators of Squadron VFA 211 gather in their ready room for one of the last briefings of this deployment.
You can plan on me assigning, holding, radio.
Megan Angerman's one of the squadron's pilots.
I grew up flying with my dad when I was little, and then I went through ROTC, and when it came time to choose what I wanted to do in the Navy, I decided that naval aviation would be the best and most exciting job, so here I am.
This is Angerman's first combat tour.
You get excited. My first time in there, I didn't know what to expect. You know, we had taken off from the carrier several times on training missions, but now it's for real, so now you have extra adrenaline and nervousness. We usually have a little bit of time right when the brief is done to just kind of focus and really think about what we're going to go do, make sure that we're not forgetting anything. And a lot of people use the term like you're in your box, you know, you try not to be distracted by other maybe collateral duties that you have. You're getting ready to go fly, and that's what your focus is on.
Just 29 years old, Angerman sits at the controls of one of the most advanced fighters in the world, a $95 million warplane, loaded with enough firepower to destroy several city blocks.
Bosun air boss, are we losing low pressure air? Because we're losing first radio on Pat 1. Air soup.
Angerman's one of 230 pilots on deck who, when they are flying, live under the scrutiny of the air boss. Ryman Schoaf controls every inch of the flight deck.
I'm the manager of the airport, but all my aircraft carry weapons. We don't have Delta or American here, but we make a bigger boom.
Like Megan Angerman, Ben Bynes is a nugget, a pilot on his first combat deployment. He's a second-generation military aviator. His father served in the Vietnam War.
I've always loved flying. When I was growing up, my dad had a bunch of pictures of his F4 days. He was a weapons officer, backseat F4s for the Jolly Rogers, and he'd tell me about it a little bit.
Bynes trained for nearly 3 years to get his shot on a carrier. Over this deployment, he'll carry out dozens of missions, and none will be routine.
First time going into a combat environment was a little nerve-wracking, mostly because you just don't want to screw it away.
It's a challenge to simply learn your way around the ship. The Enterprise is one of the largest warships in the world. She's nearly 4 football fields long. More than 60 planes can fit below and on the deck. She has 4 catapults to launch planes off the ship, 2 at the bow and 2 at the waist. 4 arresting wires to snare planes when they land cross the deck, which is just 250 feet wide. The ingenious technology that allows the Enterprise to launch and land planes took nearly a century to perfect. The first flight off a ship was all the way back in 1910. Just over a decade later, the coal carrier Jupiter was converted to the first aircraft carrier. The first carrier USS Enterprise was launched in 1936. Her scout planes made the initial contact with Japanese bombers bound for Pearl Harbor. As the Pacific Fleet's destroyers fought the Japanese Navy for 3.5 years, the Enterprise was in all but 2 of the major actions in the war. Dawn, May 15th, 1945. An on-deck camera captures disaster. A kamikaze smashes through the flight deck near the stern of the ship. 12 men are killed. 72 are wounded. Crews battle the resulting fire successfully, but she's so damaged, she was removed from the war. Over the next few months, the Enterprise sails back to the States, taking on board thousands of wounded servicemen. They stand on her deck as she sails into New York Harbor. 20 years after her launch, this Enterprise had become obsolete. A warship critical in the U.S. destruction of the Japanese Navy in World War II was slowly dismantled for scrap in the late 1950s. A new, more advanced Enterprise was already on the drawing board.
What I tell all the new sailors when they check in is they will go to different ships and possibly even different carriers, but none of them will have the history or the name that Enterprise has. The first 2 Enterprises weren't even named USS. They were just Enterprise because the first one we swiped from the British in 1775 before there was a country, so it was just Enterprise, and that proud tradition has continued on.
This Enterprise gives ground commanders tremendous power without having to build and supply air bases. From deep in the Arabian Sea, aircraft can launch and hit targets within roughly a 1,000-mile radius.
We provide power projection ashore anywhere in the world, don't require basing rights.
Known affectionately as the Big E, work began on the Enterprise a generation ago. She was the first nuclear-powered aircraft carrier built for the U.S. Navy. 8 reactors generate an enormous amount of energy. The average race car has the equivalent of 700 horsepower. The Enterprise, 280,000. She has 4 propellers, each weighing 32 tons. Christened in September of 1960, the Enterprise has borne generations of sailors and naval aviators into conflicts around the world. Her crews sailed in the blockade of the Cuban Missile Crisis. Her sailors served tours throughout America's war in Vietnam. Now, the Enterprise has sailed from her home port of Norfolk, Virginia, to the Arabian Sea. Her crews have been ordered into combat in Iraq and Afghanistan. Megan Angerman has been away from her husband, Will, for nearly 7 months.
I think the hardest part about being out here for so long is just being away from family and friends. You know, missing the little things about home.
For each deployment, the Enterprise carries 8 squadrons of aircraft. The E-2C Hawkeyes conduct airborne traffic control, detecting hostile aircraft. The Viking, designed to attack and destroy enemy submarines, now serves as the Air Wing's aerial refueler. The Prowlers are radar killers. They knock out the enemy's eyes in combat. There are 4 squadrons of FA-18s on board this cruise. 3 of the squadrons are comprised of Hornets, fighter bombers, lethal in a dogfight, deadly in the support of ground troops. The 4th unit of FA-18s is the Checkmates. They fly the Super Hornet. While it resembles the Hornet, it is essentially an entirely new aircraft with greater range and versatility against a wider array of threats. For the aviators and the rest of the crew on deck, the final squadron might be the most important. The Dragon Slayers fly the Seahawk helicopter and have 2 roles. 1, they hunt and kill enemy submarines. And 2, search and rescue. Should any Enterprise crew end up in the ocean, these crews are responsible for saving their lives.
Being able to fly and swim at the same time, you really don't get too many jobs where you can do that. We fly around and do missions and do turf flights, and then turn around the next day where we're jumping out of a helicopter doing star jumps or casting or fast roping SEALs or ELD onto decks in a small ship so they can take them over. So it just depends on what we're doing.
Rescue swimmers like Brent Blackwell are highly regarded by the air crews.
If something did happen and they ejected or the plane went down, we would be right there behind them, jumping in the water, hovering right over them to get them out of harm's way, give them medical attention.
Deck, we're 2/3 bell, 21 knots of wind, coming down to about...
The flight deck is an extremely dangerous place.
Well, we got a little less than 4.5 acres of deck space that I have to work with. And in that 4.5 acres, I'll have as many as 43 aircraft. They will be within a matter of inches from one aircraft to the next. They'll have 20,000 pounds of fuel on board. They'll have 500 pounders, 1,000 pounders, 2,000 pound bombs. So it is a lot of explosive material in a very, very small area, and we don't want them to explode on the flight deck. Well, the 2 most dangerous times, of course, is when we're launching and then we're recovering. For instance, when we're shooting aircraft, launching aircraft, out here on the waste. I mean, the people that are making that happen are within 10 feet of the airplane. And the airplane is wide open, and it's full of fuel, and it's full of ordnance. And when that airplane launches, it goes right over their head.
It is an environment where the threat of a catastrophic accident looms day and night.
Ugly because it's not like the Air Force. You don't have 10,000 feet of runway and your maintenance people are in the 2 buildings over. I mean, they're right there on the foul line. So it's the proximity of being close to the aircraft is what makes it so different.
Because of the constant pace and countless ways one can be maimed or killed, a mistake has fatal implications.
Everybody's job here is important. And then if you don't show up and don't do your job correctly that particular day, then no kidding, in this business, somebody can die. And what I tell the folks that work for me is that we have the most unique job of anyone in the world because we only have to fail once to fail forever.
Throughout her history, accidents have claimed many. But there is one day when the Enterprise faced her most dire threat. One that nearly destroyed her. January 14th, 1969. The Enterprise is 75 nautical miles from Hawaii, bound for the waters off Vietnam. A rocket explodes on the flight deck. igniting a massive fire. Multiple cameras mounted on the tower and on the deck captured the horrific scene as fuel tanks ignited and more warheads exploded. Flames and smoke engulfed the ship. The blasts from 500-pound bombs exploding on the flight deck tore the ship apart down to the waterline. Burning jet fuel spilled down, creating a suffocating inferno above and below deck. In just 20 minutes, more than 340 sailors were injured, many from the flight deck hose teams. 28 men were killed. It is a story told often to those aboard this ship today.
Quite often I stand up here and look out and just try to imagine the whole fantail engulfed in flames. It was some heroes that day, without a doubt, for sure. So I've got a lot of respect for the air boss that was here that day and what he had to go against. He sat here and watched those people die, and he's asking people to come back out and get on the hoses to put out the fire, pull away the bodies to fight the fire. Well, then there was another explosion, and those people died. So he's up here having to tell people, please get back and fight the fire, because he doesn't want to lose the ship.
Rebuilding the Enterprise so she could return to duty took exactly 51 days. Now, decades later, she's at war once again. Beginning in the early morning, each squadron starts to prep their planes for the day's strike missions. It's an operation that requires hundreds of people working around the clock. The color of their shirt defines their role. Red shirts are the firemen, as well as bomb loaders. Blue shirts maneuver the aircraft in the confined space. Brown shirts are plane captains, responsible for ensuring the plane is ready to fly. Purple shirts, or grapes, have one task: fuel. Green shirts, in addition to endless maintenance duties, work with the yellow shirts, launching and recovering aircraft. The most recognizable yellow shirt is the shooter. The shooter is the last person a pilot sees before the jet is launched off the deck. Megan Angerman is the lone female fighter pilot in her squadron.
You know, I came in the Navy, there were no female combat aviators. There were no female aviators allowed on the ship. And as my time in the Navy, that has changed. There's been growing pains. You know, I think some were very well publicized, and but every organization in the Navy, as females have come into their organization, have adapted.
The introduction of women into the cockpit of Navy aircraft was controversial from the start.
Wave off power, raise your gear, power. Eject, eject!
The Navy's first female fighter pilot, Kara Hultgreen, was killed in an accident in 1994. The final report attributed the crash to both an engine failure and pilot error. At the time, some people questioned if the accident was linked to her gender. Now, more than a decade after that accident, female aviators like Megan Angerman are commonplace in the Navy.
How's it going?
She's a nugget on her first deployment to a carrier, and according to her skipper, she's a good one.
She actually was, and I don't want to embarrass her, she was the top 5 nugget in the air wing for the entire cruise. In other words, she was the 5th best in landing performance on the aircraft carrier for the whole cruise. So yeah, I'd have to say she's a pretty good nugget.
Deployments like this have been underway since Navy strike groups began supporting ground troops fighting in Afghanistan in late 2001 and Iraq in March of 2003. During the invasion of Iraq, 6,500 aircraft blasted off decks of carriers operating in the Persian Gulf. As the ground troops advanced on Baghdad, more and more missions were devoted to close air support. Two weeks into the war, Navy and Marine pilots were flying 1,000 combat missions a day. A furious pace planned and executed by air bosses like Ryman Schoaf.
Heads up in the LA, we're stripping that L3 wire. Heads up, don't let it get ya. There's not another aircraft carrier that shoot as fast as Enterprise can. There have been periods where we've averaged shooting 4 catapults, 1 aircraft every 28 seconds, which is, to me, just amazes me that you can sit there and watch aircraft come off the flight deck that quick. I mean, that's the average as we're moving along. And if you've got a really good team of the yellow shirts bringing your aircraft up and shooters getting your aircraft off, it's amazing. I mean, it's just like ballet, and it's really fun. I mean, you really get pumped up. We're up here hooping and hollering and yelling.
103 airborne.
They aren't the only ones to appreciate a well-executed rapid launch sequence. During combat, that efficiency is critical to troops on a faraway battlefield.
If someone's shooting at you, then 15 seconds can be a long, long time. So if we are not efficient on a flight deck and we're 15 seconds late and someone gets shot at 14 seconds after the hour, then it doesn't matter that we're 1 second late at that point because that person's already dead. So it is a big deal to us that we not only shoot on time every time, but that we shoot as fast as we can.
The pressure the pilots face is much the same. And they rely on routine to ensure readiness. Day after day, they train as if the mission were for real.
The big thing is make sure you're very methodical. We train pretty extensively for all the missions that we go do. What the goal is to treat it like any other mission. Yes, the adrenaline's going to be pumping. Yes, we're delivering live ordnance against an enemy. Bottom line is, what we tried to do is to brief so thoroughly and to be so prepared to do our mission that it really didn't matter whether it was a tanking mission around the ship or it was a combat mission over Afghanistan. The same thing applies. I think it's probably the same whether you're a Nugget air crew or whether you've been doing this for 20 years. Anytime you know that the end use of your sortie is to protect men and women on the ground, and you want to do your best. We take our targeting very seriously. We go to great pains to make sure that when we employ a weapon, it's going to the right spot and then it minimizes the collateral damage to the surrounding areas. It's something that we take great pride in, and we train so well and so much that when you are out there doing it for real, it is something that I think we're ready for.
The pilots on the USS Enterprise aren't the only ones who have to stay battle-ready. Because of their ability to dramatically shift fortunes in battle, aircraft carriers have long been a favored target for enemy attack. From the kamikazes of World War II to the devastatingly effective missiles of modern warfare. To counter threats, the Enterprise has a heavily armed mini-fleet sailing alongside her day and night. A billion-dollar cruiser with the Aegis combat system can destroy any airborne threat launched against the group. A frigate equipped with small guns and torpedoes, able to defend the carrier group from enemy missiles. A guided missile destroyer, a staunch defender against airborne threats. Also, an enemy sub-hunter-killer. A supply ship fills out the surface fleet with its critical mission of keeping up the ship's stores of beans and bullets. The last member of the group is one rarely seen, the submarine Alexandria. She's among the swiftest submarines in the world and lethal. She's loaded with dozens of torpedoes and can launch cruise missiles. The Enterprise Strike Group is equipped with the most high-tech weaponry in the world. And yet, day-to-day flight operations are choreographed on what looks like a board game.
Our landing area is our launching area, is our parking area. We only have so much space on the flight deck. We only have so much space in the hangar bay. The Ouija board is what actually shows the space what we have in relation to the aircraft, and we're able to put the aircraft around in different spots on the flight deck to make that happen.
Once on station, training flights give way to combat sorties. Coalition forces generate target designations, a flight plan tailored to those orders.
Are you ready on L4? I'm ready to run L4.
On board the Enterprise, the handler is given a flight plan every day. He and his crew have to have everything in place to execute that plan.
Are you guys ready to move the boat?
Pilots like Ben Bynes fly every day of the week. 5 training missions and 2 combat flights.
This is where the air wing and the ship come together so that we can put the aircraft on with ordnance, with fuel, getting them out there on time and recovering them on time, getting them turned back around so that we can get back in the air and they can meet the mission requirements of the ship that the ship carries out every day.
From an undisclosed location in the Arabian Sea, pilots and aircrew launch in sequence and begin making their way to a designated point in the skies over Afghanistan. Ground controllers will direct pilots to attack certain targets. During flight ops, aircraft are in constant motion across the deck. The din of the catapult defines the rhythm of the day and night on a carrier. The catapult has a shuttle above deck connected to a steam-driven piston below. When the plane is locked onto the shuttle, the pilot goes to full power. Below deck, the steam reaches maximum pressure. The shooter gives the signal. The piston blasts forward, slinging the plane aloft. The catapult can launch a 33-ton Super Hornet from a standstill to 165 miles per hour in less than 300 feet and in just over 2 seconds, subjecting the pilot to 4 Gs.
When we get launched off the carrier, it knocks the wind out of me, it takes my breath away. You can't imagine how fast it is. It pins you to the back of the seat.
Every time I get launched off the front end, it's a new experience. It's not routine. Taking a catapult shot on an aircraft carrier is the best ride that any roller coaster could ever do.
I love the daytime cat shot. It's a lot of fun because right when you come off, you see the water rushing by you and everything. Just incredibly beautiful up there.
After the rush of takeoff comes the hard work. In flight, Bynes will have to juggle a constant stream of evolving information, from the locations of other aircraft to emergency plans, and ultimately, the target location, which can change up until the very last minute.
So that when and if they do call you to drop something, you can do it right away, first pass, in a very short period of time and do it accurately. That is where most of your attention is drawn. And you'll feel overwhelmed most of the time. Iraq, when we first got there, they're doing a lot of searching for IEDs, the guys on the ground, convoy escort, thing like that. When we got to Afghanistan, where they actually needed ordnance to come off the airplanes, and that was a really intense experience.
There is obviously a little heightened adrenaline because you are dropping live ordnance on enemy troops, but we're training for those exact same missions. So when we do get to enemy territory, we are very focused and know what our jobs are supposed to be. So it doesn't require a, hey, be careful because we're going to drop ordnance on enemy troops. We know what our target is. We're sure of that. We have clearance to deliver our ordnance. We're sure of that, and we're going to do our job to deliver that ordnance on target.
Being a junior guy and not being totally familiar, even with the Hornet itself, and then being put into a situation where you were taking everything you learned up till then, plus being introduced to a ton of new stuff right off the bat that you had to be very accurate with. I mean, there isn't a whole lot of room for mistake, and you'd feel horrible if you did make a mistake. That's a lot of responsibility on your back to make sure that you release that weapon in the proper parameters and hit the correct target.
Ground troops have come to rely on air power. Every day for 6 weeks, Angerman, her skipper, and the rest of the Air Wing crews alternated on combat runs all over Afghanistan, flying more than 1,000 miles from the Arabian Sea and over the unforgiving mountainous terrain of Afghanistan. With each passing minute, the threat level rises.
Knowing that you're over enemy territory, you're doing the real thing, it does help you keep you focused a little bit. You've always got it in the back of your mind, like, oh, okay, I don't want to mess this up. You don't want to make mistakes, and sometimes you're just praying that your tanker is there when he's supposed to be there, and if it's not, then you're trying to work backup plans, because you're always thinking about, boy, this would be a really bad place to run out of gas or something,
For a fighter pilot, running out of fuel in the skies of Afghanistan could cost you your life. But so could an aerial refueling. After almost 2 hours en route, the plane has to refuel. It must be done quickly and efficiently, and it challenges the nerves of even the most experienced pilots. For Nuggets, it's gut-wrenching. Pilots edge up to the basket at the end of the fuel line. They need to fly exactly the same speed at a precise altitude to get their probe locked into position.
You brief it as best you can. The people who've done it for a long time try to give you as much wisdom as you can, but then once you find yourself sitting behind the basket just a few feet and you have your probe and you got to fly the probe into the basket, you're the only one who can do that for you. And sometimes can be significantly more stressful than other times, especially when you're low on fuel and it's turbulent and the basket's moving around. It can be very stressful. It can be very intense.
Once they're gassed up, pilots and their wingmen move into what is called the stack, a multi-tiered formation of aircraft orbiting and waiting to be called to attack. There are numerous threats they face once they're in country.
Being such a long mission, you're doing a lot of transit time, but the time when you're on station, it's only a small portion of our actual mission. So the biggest concern is that you are ready to do your job for the very specific hour or 2 hours or 3 hours that you're going to be doing it. And so the biggest threat, in my opinion, is not just the weather, but complacency as well.
Add to that the risk of crashing in the rugged mountainous terrain of Afghanistan.
Afghanistan is very mixed terrain. It has plains and it also has very steep mountains. So you have to be very careful. As we like to say, if you hit the ground, that you're going to be killed 100% of the time, all the time.
Compounding that, the enemy Taliban guerrilla forces have some success disrupting communication.
They jam most of the radio frequencies, so that can be fairly frustrating. Sometimes you go the entire flight and you can't talk to your wingman.
The skies over Afghanistan are swarming with military aircraft. Entering the stack, a layered holding pattern where aircraft circle the battlefields at prescribed altitudes, waiting for their orders to attack.
For us in Afghanistan, the biggest threat was running into another coalition aircraft.